So I've been talking a lot with educators in the schools that I'm working with or on Twitter about blended learning. And I'm not here to claim that I'm an expert on blended learning, but really, when we think about it, we have to look at the pedagogical foundation. And when we think about the blend, it's a blend of strategies and technology to really improve that learning experience. But let's go back to blended learning. Blended instruction is what the teacher does with technology. Blended learning is where kids use technology to control path, pace, and place. So when we think about the keys to effective blended learning, I've kind of zeroed in four key elements. And those elements are strategies, four key focus areas. So when we think about the keys to successful blended learning, we're looking at strategies, elements, models, and solutions. Solutions really are the tools. But let's look at blended learning. You can't have quality learning if you don't have good instruction. Good instruction, again, is what the teacher does. Learning is what the kid does. Good instruction should lead to good and great learning opportunities from our kids. So when we think about key number one, in terms of effective blended learning, it's really about the strategies. Strategies based on research, strategies we know that work. So when we think about setting the stage for effective blended learning, we got to look at small group instruction, how we check for understanding, differentiation, assessment, both formative and summative, and ongoing feedback. So it's those instructional strategies that can really set up the different types of blended models that we'll talk about in a few minutes. As we think about key number two, which is elements. When we think about the elements, what has to go into a blended experience for kids? Those elements include path. Do kids get to choose the path in terms of their learning? Pace, the pace at which they learn. Place, where they learn, and that's where flexible spaces really come into play. Choice, are they able to choose the right tool for the right task? Are they able to choose what type of product they want to create and choose how they show understanding? And finally, voice. How are we integrating different pathways for kids to use their voice in terms of dictating and explaining how they've learned? So as we think about these first two elements, looking at strategy, the first two key areas where we look at strategy and elements, the next are models. And there are tons of different models out there. And you can read the literature, but sometimes I just think they can be too complicated. And, I'm really from the camp of keep it simple, stupid. So when we look at models, the four that I'm going to list are really ones that I see embraced and implemented at scale in many schools. You have station rotation, where there are set stations and kids rotate through them. Maybe one of those stations involves technology. They don't all have to involve technology. A second very popular practical model is choice boards. And this is a great way to differentiate instruction and differentiate tasks and products, where you have a board of a certain amount of tasks and kids choose maybe two, maybe three. They can choose ones based on where they are in terms of data. But again, it is that differentiate component, but kids choose which specific activities they're going to do. Three, playlists. Playlists have really grown in popularity. This is where teachers will plan out maybe a day, 2, 3 days worth of activities that focus on different levels of knowledge, different levels of understanding. So again, with the playlist, it doesn't have to involve technology. And as we think about it, maybe there's an adaptive learning tool built in as one of the playlist activities. But here's the deal. Kids control, path, pace, and place as they go through that playlist. And the feedback that I give teachers and administrators is, doesn't matter how many activities, you want them to be differentiated. You want them to get kids thinking and applying their thinking. But when the kids are all done with that playlist, let's think about how do we know they were competent in those activities? So one thing I suggest is after the playlist, having different degrees of questions for kids to answer to determine the level of competency in terms of how they completed those tasks. And then finally, and this model is really popular for middle school and high school, is the flipped classroom. Flipped classroom has been along for a while, but when you think about especially pace and place, having kids go through a 5-10 minute lesson where they can go through the content in the comfort of their own home. They can go through it over and over again. And then again, the technology piece is outside the classroom. Then in the classroom, you're really working on differentiation, giving kids the support they need, active application of the concepts. So as we think about those first three keys, going back to strategies, elements, and models, the next is the solutions. And the solutions is always the what. The what are, if we're going to use technology, what tools are we going to use to enhance the blended experience? The solutions, the what, should be the last piece. And we got to remember, technology will not improve every outcome. It won't improve every lesson. So it doesn't have to be a component of a blended environment, but more often than not it is. So as we think about solutions, think about the ones where there's evidence that they actually improve learning. Think about the ones that give you good data aligned to standards, that align to your scope and sequence. Some of my favorites that when I think about those other three keys are Go Formative, Edpuzzle, PlayPosit, Flipgrid. Looking at tools such as Prodigy, ST Math, IXL. So there's tons out there that are free and ones you can purchase. But again, how will the solution help kids learn? How will it provide the teacher and administrators valuable data that can be used to inform instruction? So again, those are just 4 key areas to effective blended learning. I'd be interested to see on social media what you have found effective. Please share so that we can continue to build a repository of the best practical ideas of how to create blended learning experiences that actually improve outcomes for kids. Thanks for listening, everybody.